everyone, Mr. Parr here. I am currently isolating, so I thought what I would do, I would record a video to help you prepare for your mock exams. So this short session is going to just focus on writing flowcharts as pseudocode, and a lot of people struggle with algorithms, especially writing pseudocode. So it's going to cover some basics and some common misconceptions and mistakes which people kind of can easily sort of rectify, really. Okay, so three main fundamentals of programming constructs are sequence, selection, and iteration. So this is quite a simple sequence program. You can see it has a couple of few different variables and things happen in a certain sequence. And if it wasn't that sequence, the algorithm wouldn't work as appropriate. You can probably figure out what it does. So what we need to do is to write this flowchart as pseudocode. Now, by all means, if you want to have a practice, pause the video and go ahead, but I'm going to go straight in with the answer. So first of all, on our flowchart, we have our terminators, start and ends. You might be presented with them or not. You don't need to put them in your pseudocode. I never do, so let's just sack it off. Let's just not bother. Okay. If you really wanted to, you can do. I'm not going to bother. So first thing to notice is the shape here. Okay, so that shape there, the parallelogram, is an input or an output. Okay, common mistakes people make when drawing it is they sometimes draw it like that. Okay, wrong, go away, error, noob, no, it's got to be a parallelogram. Okay, this shape here is a process. Okay, this is where something's happening, something's changing, doesn't require any input or output from the user. All right, so let's go ahead and have a go at writing this algorithm. So first thing we need to do, we need to input the base. So I always recommend you write this as if you're writing a Python program. So if you've got an input, you need to have a variable. You need to have a variable in order to store that data. Oh, excuse me. Okay, base. And what we do then is use an equals as an assignment statement. Okay, so an equals or an assignment statement, what it means is take what's to the right and assign it to the variable on the left. Okay, in this case, we want to assign what's been input. Okay, base is going to be assigned, so whatever input is going to be assigned to the variable base. Now, according to this algorithm, that's all we need to do. Okay, it doesn't ask us for a prompt. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Okay, I will normally carry on with enter base. Okay, that's what I would normally do, as if you're writing it in Python. Okay, when it comes to marking it, we have to mark positively, so we have to mark for what's there. All right, so I'll always probably go around that, go through that route. Okay, so input base, so we have to do the same for height. Height equals input enter height. There we go, done that, nice and simple. Good. The next thing is we have to calculate the area, and that is exactly the same as what's there. Now remember, bid mass, bod mass, whatever you want to call it, does apply. Okay, area equals, so it's important that base, remember the star means multiply, times height. Okay, and the slash means divided by 2. So it's going to take the contents of the variable base, multiply by the contents of the variable height, divide the answer by 2, then assign the answer to the variable area. Now we need to output the area, so we do print, and then we do area. Notice that area isn't in speech marks, that would just print the string area. We want to print the variable area. Okay, relatively straightforward, but here's a couple of common mistakes people make. This is the most common one. They'll do this one. This one. Input equals base. Why is that wrong? Why do you think that's wrong? Okay, well, the reason it's wrong is because of that assignment statement. Okay, just by putting that in, what it says, right, it's trying to find a variable called base and assign it to a variable called input. Okay, well, for a start, input is like a command word, really. You don't really want to use that as a variable name. Okay, now, funny enough, if you just put this input base, that would be correct. That's fine. Okay, however, I always kind of promote people to do it this way. Number one is because it reinforces the when we program in Python, that kind of how we use variables. And two, it just makes sure we know how to use correctly the assignment statement. Okay, so that is the common misconception. Make sure you do variable equals. If you're going to do it this way, variable first, or always put an equals. If you are going to go this way, okay, you don't put an assignment statement in. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So relatively straightforward. Other thing maybe is if you did print area, you probably would still get the marks. It's just we normally put things in brackets because that's what Python likes. It has to have brackets following in a function. All right. If in doubt, I always recommend just write it in Python or as close to that as possible. So sequence, when you're doing things in a particular order. Right, next, selection. If you ever hear that word selection, okay, what is that? What does that mean? It is if, elif, else, if statements. Okay, so how is this represented in a flow chart? Well, what happens is, well, I've lost my pointer, is when you see this diamond, okay, this is a conditional statement. Okay, so in other words, it's going to do something based on a condition. The condition is what this thing is inside. Okay, and when you see a well, it's conditional, what's called a decision. Okay, it has to make a decision based on that condition, and this decision could be an if statement, but it could also be a loop. We'll come back to that. Okay, so it's going to decide which route to go depending on if we meet this condition or if this condition is met, it's true, it's going to go that way. Otherwise, it's going to go that way. We've got two conditional statements in here. All right, let's have a go at doing this. So it starts off quite straightforward. So we're going to let's change that color to red. Red stands out a bit better. So we have score equals input. Enter score. Excuse my handwriting, I'm trying a new graphics tablet out here to do this. Okay, so we've done that. So we've got our first conditional statement. All right, our first decision. Now, when you are looking at a flow chart and you see a diamond, don't automatically assume it's going to be an if statement. The way to check is to see which way your arrows go. So you've got one going down and it follows down. Good. This one goes to the right and it goes down as well. If it goes down and carries on below, it's going to be an if statement. If it goes back up and it goes back on itself, it's going to be a loop. Now we know this one's going to be an if statement. Well, plus also I've said it's going to be selection. So it's going to have an if statement. So we have if. If what? Okay. And that's followed by our condition. That's this one. If the score is greater than or equal to 70. If score is greater than or equal to 70, then. Remember in Python, we don't have the word then, we have a colon, right? You want to get marked down if you put a colon, that's fine. It's just, I'm writing it in a way as if OCR were writing their pseudocode. So if it was presented to you as pseudocode, how it would possibly look. Okay, so if the score is greater than or equal to 70, in other words, if it meets that condition, in other words, it's yes, what do we want to happen? We want it to output the word merit. Now with pseudocode and if statements, if it meets this condition, whatever we wanted to do, it has to be indented. It has to be indented slightly. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to do print merit. Okay, there's my indentation. Make sure there's a decent amount of space so the examiner can clearly see what's indented. Now you have to make sure, and I see it quite a lot, what people do, you have to make sure your if and else line up. Okay, so I've got this bit. If it meets that condition, it does that. Okay, if it doesn't meet the condition, we have to put an else. Sorry, still getting used to this. So else. Okay, so that's our no. That's if else. Okay, so if not, it doesn't ask us to output anything, does it? It's asking us to go to another if statement. So here, if, notice how this is indented, because what we need to do is on our else statement, what do we want to happen if it doesn't meet that condition has to be indented. So then we have our next one, if score is greater than or equal to 50. Still getting used to this pen. Then right, so now we've got our second conditional statement. If our score is greater or equal to 50, if it is, output pass. So then this has got to be indented again because it's only meeting this condition. Print pass or pass if you're posh. Okay. Else. Okay. If not, it needs to output fail. So it's got to be indented. Print fail. Okay. And you don't have to do this in your pseudocode, but it's good practice. It closes that if statement, and we have to close this if statement. Okay. This is something called nested selection. In other words, this if statement is nested within this one. Okay. It only does it, you know, if it's kind of nested within. Okay. Notice how if, else, and end if all line up there. If, else, end if all line up there, and our indentation lines up. That's really important. Okay. Alternative, what you might do, where's my rubber? Feel free to pause it before I erase it. Okay. Just a very slightly different one, which you might have, which a lot of people do. Bit of whistling while it is. Whistle while you work. Okay. What some people do is they'll do else if on the same row. Else if score greater or equal to 50, then print pass, and then you'd have else print fail. I'm rushing this now. End if. Okay. That will probably work. Not necessarily the same as what's in your flowchart there, but it would still work, wouldn't it? Okay, it's going to meet all those conditions. And obviously sometimes in Python, I can write it as elif. Ooh. Elif. Okay. Either way, it's still going to work. Okay. Let's move on to our last one then, which is iteration, which is looping. Okay. So remember, iteration can be what's called condition controlled, which we'll do first of all. And condition controlled iteration are normally while loops, which we're all familiar with, or do until, which we don't use in Python, but you might see it in an algorithm. Another type of iteration will be count controlled, in which case we do for loops in this case. All right then. So we can tell in our flowchart this is a loop because what we've got is we've got a decision, which is a diamond, but in this case the arrow goes back up on itself. Okay, whatever is within this arrow here is the loop. Essentially, it is what needs to be repeated until this condition is met, and that is when the count is equal to 10. Okay, I'm going to write it first of all using a while loop, and then we'll look at how we do it using a for loop, because it's count controlled because we're counting up this number up to 10. It's going to get to a number. It's not if we choose to stop the loop. We know it's going to loop a certain amount of times. Okay, Right, so starts off straightforwards. So let's have num equals input into number. Okay. Our count is initialized. Our variable is initialized 0. Our total is initialized as 0. Now, it's very easy to kind of just carry on and do all these next. But the problem is these exist within the loop. Okay, these three things, because we've got that line there. So if you're presented with a flowchart that's got a loop, okay, what you have to do at this stage is to jump ahead to this bit, is to do our condition of the loop. So in other words, our loop is only going to continue, it's only going to go around if our count doesn't meet 10. Okay, if count is not equal to 10. If it does equal to 10, it goes that way. If not, it goes that. So how do we represent that in our while loop? So, because if while count equals to 10, end, that's not going to work. So we have to do the opposite. So while count is not equal to 10. So it doesn't matter that our condition here doesn't meet that in there. It does the same thing. Is while our count is not 10, is not equal to 10. All right. So what do we want it to do when it doesn't equal to 10? Well, first of all, count equals count plus 1. And just like our if statement, whatever we want to happen when it meets that condition is that to be indented. So we do count equals count plus 1. And what that will do, we'll take the contents of count, add 1 to it and pop it back in. Our total equals total plus num. Okay, so what it's going to do is going to take our total, add our num to it, and then assign it back to total. And then we want to output the total, so we'll do a print statement. Print total. Does anything have to happen? No, that's it. That's the end of the loop. So we can then do an end while. Once again, look at the indentation, while and end while line up, and everything we want to loop lines up as well. Okay, do we want anything to happen after the loop? No, we don't. And that's it. Nice and simple. All right. So, well, I say nice and simple. Let's do a quick little, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little trace table. Now, you don't need to do these for your exam, but they're very, very useful. So we're going to have num. I'm going to put C for count. I'm going to have T for total, and we have count not equal to 10. So, whoa, my word. Okay. Oh, this ain't going to work. I'm not used to this at all. Okay. Well, I've got to tidy that up. That is awful, isn't it? Oh, God, it's even worse. I'm losing it now. That's better. That'll do. So what this does, this trace table allows us to work our way through and see what would happen virtually with our algorithm. So if we start off num equals input, let's choose 2. We put number 2 in. Count is 0. Total is 0. Now, next bit. Does count not equal to 10? Well, 10 is 0, so that is, I'm going to put true. That is true. So what happens then? Count becomes count plus 1, so 0 becomes 1. Total is total plus num, so T is 0, num is 2. Okay, and we print total. Okay, now, is count equal to 10? Is count not equal to 10? Well, count is now 1, so once again we do true. Okay, count becomes count plus 1, so let's put a line in. That becomes 2. Total is total plus num, so 2 plus num is 4. Okay, count is 2, so it's still not equal to 10, so that's true. That adds 1, that becomes 6 because it's 4 plus 2. That's true. Okay, can see what's going on. That goes up by 1. 2 is added onto that. That makes 8. Oh, don't be an idiot. Ah! The pen keeps on moving in my hand. Okay, true. Okay, that becomes 5. True. Okay, 6, 12. You can see what happens all the way up until that becomes 10. Okay, eventually that becomes 10. Okay, and then it's going to output, that becomes false, and then it ends. All right, so basically what this algorithm does, you put the number in, and then it's just going to output the times table, what's called the factors, not the factors, but that's timetable up to 10 times that. Okay, that's what it does. And there's the flowchart, and there's your algorithm for it. All right, so that one uses a while loop, condition controlled. All right, another way of doing it is by using a for loop. So let's just make a little box. And how would I do it using a for loop? So it starts off the same. Num equals input. Enter num. Whoa, run, yes please. Num. Okay, we still have our total. All right, but this time we know how many loops we're going to do. It's going to be 10 loops. So we can just do a for loop. For I equals 1 to 10. Okay, so in other words, we're going to loop 10 times. Okay, so each time we want to loop, what do we want to happen? We don't need the count because that's done for us for our for loop. So we just do total equals total plus num, and then we print our total. Okay, and then we do next I. That's just the way the pseudocode is presented by OCR. Because as I said, if you're writing it, you don't necessarily have to put it in there, but it's always good practice. Obviously in Python, you don't need to. Okay, so there's an example using count controlled iteration. All right, quite confusing, but you get the idea of using variables and writing in that particular way. I'd say the main thing is if you were presented with this diamond here, if the arrow goes back up, it's going to be a loop, okay? And it's going to be a loop while it meets that, or in this case, while it doesn't meet that condition, okay? If the arrow goes down, it's got an if statement, okay, a conditional statement. Most common things, mistakes people make is that one. Please, please, please don't do that. Input equals base. Just to be careful with using quote marks and stuff when you're entering your variables as well. Okay, this is the second time I record this video because for some reason the first time it didn't record. All right, so hope it's been useful. Any questions, just please send me an email, and hopefully get some more videos ready for you as soon as possible. Okay, speak to you soon, and take care. Be safe. Bye.